Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Marvin.
It's really a joy to see you and to spend some time together to talk about your life. When I do these interviews, I usually start off by saying, do you remember when we first met?
The first time I remember was in 1979. The reason I remember that date is it was the week that I acquired my first piece of property in Napa Valley, and that's where Meadowood is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was in August of 79, 45 years ago. 45 years ago.
Where did we meet and how did we meet?
Well, I had no idea why you were there.
Yeah.
All I heard was that it was like about the same time, maybe even the same month,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, that you bought the Spectator.
It was around that time, at 79, yeah.
And so you were, I didn't really know who you were. Just some way we met. I think maybe Robin Lale may have introduced us.
I knew Robin well.
That's what I would guess, but I don't know how else I would have run into you.
I knew her well because she worked for Robert Mondavi.
Yes.
And I was good friends with Robert Mondavi. But that I didn't remember that, but I'm sure that's the case. I think she also told me about you. And I had no idea who you were. So I remember 1981, because in 1981 I moved the Spectator from San Diego to Opera Plaza.
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
And you became my landlord. And then in 1981 I joined Meadowood. I was the first national member. And in 1981 Meadowood hosted the first Napa Valley wine auction. And I remember that I insisted on getting paddle number 1, and I bought lot number 1 because I wanted to be able to say 30 years later, whatever, that I was there and I had the first paddle and bought the first. So now I fulfilled, what was in my head in 1981.
Well, at that time, I was convinced I was going to be the one that bought the first lot. Robert Mondavi, I had, within, I'd say 60 days of the time that we acquired Meadowood, Robert Mondavi gave me a call. Yeah. And he invited me to lunch. So when Robert Mondavi invites you to lunch, you show up. Yeah. But what triggered that was he is the one that really talked me into this property hosting the wine auction. Mm. And so he sent me on this trip. Mm. And on this trip, I had ended up at the Hospice de Beaune. And then there was a fellow traditionally that bought the first lot. And at that time, I said, okay, if we do this, I'm going to buy the first lot. I remember bidding against you.
Well, you were too cheap. I remember, I think it was 2 bottles of BV. And I think I ended up paying an astronomical $400. And I guess you weren't willing.
All I remember was you weren't going to stop. And I said, buying the property is one big, everything I was already doing. Do I really need this wine? And so it was, whatever it was, I don't remember what that number was.
So I remember the big controversy. I don't know all the details, maybe you do. But there was a case of wine called Napa Nook, which was, and I don't know, was it a Mondavi wine? Was it a joint venture? Some retailer bought it. He paid $24,000, which was a huge amount of money for a case of wine. It got huge publicity. And then what I heard was he never could pay for it. But they kept it quiet all these years, but they never collected the money. Do you have any recollection of that?
I don't remember it, but I knew at that time what Napa Nook was.
What was Napa Nook?
It was a piece of property that Robin Lale inherited. Yeah. I don't know exactly how, but she, of all the properties that were sold by her father, or I think by her father, that he kept that piece. Yeah. Best of my recognition. Yeah. Best I can remember.
I'd have to go back to the records to find out all the details, but it was quite a story that nobody wanted to tell because they thought it would cast a dark shadow on the auction after all the publicity that it got. It was a retailer from New York. I don't remember his name or anything like that. So in preparing for this interview, as you know, you're the fifth in a 5-part series, and after you, I'm done, where I interviewed Chuck Wagner, Angelo Gaia, Christian Moex, Pierre Antonori, and now you. And the thing that I realized that blows me away is that I picked the 5 of you because I thought you were icons in the wine industry who deserved to have a history recorded for future generations. And I'm glad that you're last, because what occurred to me is the other 4 all came from wine families. And of course I asked him, was it expected that you would go into the family business? So they all, in case of Antonori, it was 600 years, but they all had families that had been in the wine business, and it was a natural extension of their lives to continue in the wine business. You, if I read the history correctly, were sort of a lost child growing up. You raced motorcycles, you were into flying and sailing, you sailed around the world, you did a lot of nutty things, not a normal life before you. And then you got into real estate, and I guess that's sort of where I met you, went from Apple Plaza. And then you got into wine, and we're going to tell the story of where you are today. But with that childhood and no involvement in wine and no family in wine, how the hell did you get from there to sitting here as one of the 5 icons with no family history?
I'd say it's a combination of I'd say primarily fate, because it wasn't a plan. Mm-hmm. I had some dreams. I had a lot of dreams, like you say. I wanted to see the world. I didn't have any money, but I wanted to see the world. So I would say the first almost 40 years of my life was, I wouldn't say a wanderer, but maybe an adventurer, or I was very, very curious from the time I was pretty young. I didn't love school. I did okay in school. I got into good schools, those kinds of things, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I wanted to see the world, to see what was out there. I said, we only live once, and to get started on something, I wasn't sure that's what I really wanted to do. I was willing to try a whole lot of different things. So I did get to do those things. I got to do almost everything I could think of or dream about. But I would say when I turned 30, when I was getting closer to turn 40, I was 38. When I met you, I was 38 years old. The next month, I turned 39. And at that time, I said, it's time for me to settle down. I bought my first piece of land. It was in the Napa Valley. But I would say what got me into wine more than anything else was, first, when I was a little kid, about 8 or 9 years old, my parents always gave us rules, what we could, that we were not supposed to do. My parents basically said there are 2 things that we want to make sure that you can remember to do, and 2 things not to do. That was about as many things I think they figured this kid could remember. One was the first don'ts is don't hurt yourself and don't hurt others. And the do's, do what you know is right and do your best. That was it. And so that gave me a lot of freedom to do everything I wanted to do. Tried to stay out of as much trouble as possible. I wasn't always a person that stayed totally out of trouble, but never did something bad enough that got me in, ruined my future. Anyway.
Well, I mean, one of the things you did, according to the research, is that you sailed literally around the world. I mean, I wouldn't go on a boat in an ocean if it had 9 engines, if my life depended on it. And you're sailing around the world. You have to be, forget about your motorcycles and you're flying, and you have to be crazy. But did you ever sit or stand on the deck of the boat, I don't know how big or small the boat was, and say, what am I going to do with my life?
Oh, that was my whole life, figuring out what I'm going to do with it. And in the meantime, it's happening. And my sailing around the world wasn't quite like your image of it, probably. Mm-hmm. After I'd put in my years of racing bikes and and learning how to fly and getting aerobatic flying and doing crazy stuff, flying under bridges. And I said, sooner or later, it's not like racing bikes. You jump up and dust yourself off. Yeah. I had to quit. I quit flying. And that's why I decided it was time to learn about the sea. When I was a kid during the war, we always heard the Marines hymn, battles on the land and air and sea. So I wanted to see the land. I wanted to see the air and the sea. So the first was the land, and I was off to England to get set up for my bike for the next season. And it was in wintertime, and I said, really, where are the girls in the wintertime? And it wasn't in London. And they said, the Canary Islands would be a great place to go. So I hitchhiked down to Gibraltar, met some guys in a bar in Gibraltar, and they said it was a lot more interesting in Marrakesh. Take the ferry to Morocco, head on down to Marrakesh. It'll be a lot more interesting. So that was the beginning. I'd always wanted to climb the pyramids. I wanted to go into the heart of Africa, things like that. So that started a year on hitchhiking from London to Cape Town. So that was my year on the land and living on the land, never eating in hotels or staying in hotels or eating at restaurants. So that was an experience, and then I came back from that and felt it was time to go to sea, to learn about the sea. So I got a job as a merchant marine. Happened to be on a sailboat that was owned by Stanford University, doing oceanographic research. It's backed by the National Science Foundation. And to be able to get that job, I had to learn celestial navigation. If I was going to sail around the world, I needed to do those things and learn about the sea and learn about all those things. So that's what I did that, but it took another 10 years before I was able to get a boat.
Were you close to your parents?
I was very close to my parents when I was a kid. I had wonderful parents. I grew up in a middle-class family. My father actually worked in a slaughterhouse from the time I was born until he was, he worked there for 47 years. And he was, but they were loving, caring parents. But when I left home to go to school, I kind of never came back. I come back and visit them for holidays. Yeah.
But did they understand what was happening with your life? I mean, the things that you just mentioned all over the world, I mean, it takes a certain amount of bravery and stupidity to do the thing, I mean, at great risk, whether it's the occupation or the hobby of all the things you did. It doesn't seem like you had any guardrails on your life. Whatever your impulses were, that's what you did.
Well, I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't get married really young. Yeah. My brothers, I had 2 brothers. Yeah. One of them got killed in an automobile accident when he was 18. The other one got married when he was about 19 or 20 and had children. So it kept my parents happy as far as having grandchildren and that kind of thing. And they never knew really what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. So they loved me and hoped that I'd turn out, but they never really knew.
But you never stopped to think about what you were doing. You just did whatever opportunities came across.
When you're on the road, I mean, like going through Africa, I waited as long as 10 days on the side of the road for a ride. You have a lot of time to think. What am I really doing? What am I going to do next? What do I really want to do with this life?
By the way,
so that went on. Go ahead.
I'm drinking the Harlan 1994. It's spectacular.
Well, thank you.
To taste it and hear the story while I'm drinking your wine is pretty amazing. So, the phase that I met you at was when you had Pacific Union, because you built Opera Plaza, and that's when I met Peter Palmisano, and he was a great guy.
Oh yeah, he's still a great friend today. I mean, I talk with him. I'd say almost every month.
Well, tell him I send my regards. But
definitely
I didn't really know you. I knew of you, and I knew Peter Stocker, and both very casually. And then, of course, what year he was in a helicopter accident and passed away? Was that around 81, 82? It was early on.
That was it was a little later than that. It was in 1990.
Oh, I didn't realize.
So still, that's 35 years ago.
Yeah. So your first venture in wine was Maryvale, correct?
Yes. I had been doing some custom crush because I want to learn about the business.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the first harvest that I did was in 1983, and it was we were at Rombauer, and Christian Moex was also there doing Dominus, and I was looking for a place to make wine. And Robin Lael is the one that kind of guided me with one of the things that where to do, what to go, all those kinds of things. Yeah. And that's where I ended up, and watching what he was doing, the Moex family, famous, and what they were doing with Petrus was like a dream thing, and that's how it started. But it wasn't long before I found out, where I really recognized it's very hard to have control of what you're doing when you're custom crushing somewhere else. In different tanks, they may need the tanks of harvesters.
But what got you? I mean, where did this all start? You just mentioned you first started custom. Why did you custom? I mean, where did this? You're developing buildings in San Francisco and in the suburbs, and boom, you're in the wine business. What was step one?
What happened was when I went off to school. The Napa Valley is about an hour away. Yeah. And I heard, from the upperclassmen always fill the younger people into what's going on. They said, well, there's a place where you can go wine tasting. It's close by. The girls like going up there. They don't check your ID, and it's free. So it seemed like a pretty good program for a college student. So that was in 1958.
And what school were you
at? Berkeley. And so anyway, that's how it started. I came back the next year. I came maybe 3 or 4 times during that year. I came back the next year in 59 and did, in quotes, a little documentary on the Napa Valley to get in behind the scenes to see what winemaking was really like. Mm-hmm. And then in 1960, I said, someday I want to see the world, but when I was ready to settle down, I'd like to buy a little piece of land, find a wife, plant a vineyard, raise a family, and maybe make wine. Now, you heard all these other dreams I had. Yeah. This is just one of a whole bunch. Yeah. And so.
So when was the first time you actually executed the wine plan, or what was the first step in getting involved in the wine business?
When I would say Carl Domaney. What happens? Remember I talked about
great cigar smoker, Carl Domaney,
for sure. And I was living on a tugboat at the time. Yeah. And a boat sails into the harbor, and it's a great, beautiful schooner, a gaff rig topsail schooner, and it was a kind of boat, a dream that I dreamt about. I'd like to go sailing around the world. It was a little too big boat I was looking for, but that type of boat, but smaller. So I went over, and the guy happened to be an architect, and he had his family living on the boat, and he was up there because they had bought a piece of land in the Sausalito, right at the base of the Golden Gate Bridge on the north end. And I invited him over to the tugboat to kind of hear about his boat and hear about his story. And so I had dinner with him on the tugboat and told him about my dream of getting a boat sailing around the world. And he says, well, I have a friend that bought a boat for him, like mine. They're built in Denmark. This one, his was an old boat. And the boat that he got for this guy was built in 1910. It was an old sailing cargo vessel. And I said, well, I don't want something that big. And he says, well, you know, he's an interesting guy. He's got a winery up in the Napa Valley. Well, once he said that, I said, well, at least I'd like to meet him. So when you meet Domaney, he's like no one else. You know, he's a real character. Yeah. And he has this boat that I've got an interest in.
I didn't know anything about that. I used to smoke cigars with him all the time.
So anyway, I ended up trading him a dozen parcels of land for this boat. Yeah. And that's the boat that you asked about Peter Stocker, that what I did, made a deal, traded for that boat. And then I said, when we started Pacific Union, we'll use this as kind of the mascot for our company. And
so how did you get to wine?
Okay, so I started looking for vineyard land with Carl. He was showing me all these different things. What he had was the dream. Once I saw that he had Stag's Leap Winery, right? Not the one with Warren Vinyarski, but the one almost.
I know it well. I've been there many times.
So what he had was what I said. This is kind of what I'd like to do. My idea of settling down sometime. Yeah. Well, I still didn't have I didn't have someone I want to marry. I had a girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. And so I was looking for properties. I remember even before that, I saw the property, Chateau Montelena, that was for sale. There's a big fence around it. You look in there, it's look like a castle or something. And I said, maybe something like this. But once I saw Carl's place, that was it. And then I met Robert Mondavi. I mentioned to you a phone call, and he wanted to do this wine auction. And so he said, I would like to send you on a trip to give you some perspective of the potential of the Napa Valley. And so he said, I'm going to send you on this trip.
So who went on the trip with you?
His assistant, Robin Lale, and her husband. Yeah. And I had an old girlfriend that was living in Paris. So I called her to see if she'd like to come along. She said, sure. And so the four of us went on this trip.
So Bob set up the appointments?
Set up the whole thing.
Because you went to Bordeaux and Burgundy.
Yeah, 2 weeks in Bordeaux, visited all the first groves, met the families, met the winemakers. Yeah. And then saw the beautiful chateaus of Bordeaux, which I'd never even dreamt about before I see it and heard of something like this. And a week in Burgundy, visiting the Grand Crus, the same kind of thing. Yeah. And at the end, it was to see the Hospice de Beaune, because he wanted to do the same thing. The idea for the Napa Valley wine auction, and he thought the place should be Meadowood, and he was trying to win me over to use that for the wine auction. And at the end of that, Robert Drouin had been our host when we were there. Between Robin and Bob, they had organized the whole thing. And so when I came back from that trip, my whole perspective on time changed.
I got it. What year was this?
1980.
You know, we talk about Robert Mondavi in very real terms. But it's very clear to me that he had a huge impact on your life and your career. And although a lot of people don't know, he had a huge impact on my life, starting in the early 70s. And when you mentioned about the trip and everything, it's Robert Mondavi that called me and insisted that I buy the California Wine Experience, which had its first year in 1981. It was a bomb at the hotel in San Francisco that Richard Swig owned.
Oh, the Fairmont.
Fairmont. And that same weekend, I had done what was called a Grand Award Wine Weekend in New York at the Windows on the World. And he called me afterwards and said, you got to come out. We got to have a meeting with Richard Swig, and he got the mayor of San Francisco. And they put me in a room, and they said that we need your help you need to take it over. And I said, I don't want to take it over. I'm in New York, you're in San Francisco. He convinced me to buy it. I paid $1 and I combined the two. And now we're celebrating our 43rd year of the New York Wine Experience. I put it into a scholarship foundation, the Wine Spectator Scholarship, and it has given out over $50 million of profits that Robert was behind in day one to schools in California and other places, and scholarships, and as you know, in Sonoma State and now in Napa College and so forth. And it's the influence that this man has had. You know, he's been on the cover 7 times, and shame on me, I never interviewed him. I wish I could probably recreate it as though he were here and just put in his words, because I knew him so well. He was such a great spirit and ambassador to the world for people that love wine.
For sure. I mean, I would say, again, that was fate.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning on meeting Robert Mondavi. I had no idea. Get a call from him.
Yeah. So you come back from this trip, and then what's your action plan?
And what?
And what's your action plan? You came back, you saw these chateaus, you saw what could be. You know what's in Napa Valley, you know what was in Bordeaux and Burgundy. You obviously had great desire to make something happen. So what did you do?
I came back from that trip, totally changed my perspective, not only on time, but what I really want to do. Yeah. And that was, I put together a 200-year plan. Now, jumping from...
Most people have a 5-year plan, maybe.
Well, jumping from, this whole life of America and California and the tech world, all these things, it's about highest return on our time and on our investment. And once you see what's going on in the old world, and primarily in France, Bordeaux and Burgundy, especially in Burgundy, this was about generations. It was about centuries. It wasn't about quarterly earnings. Well, that's a big change from what you think you should probably be doing. And so that 200-year plan was to break me away from how I was thinking was going on in the New World, and how it forced me to still have the freedom to not feel pressure on getting on with things, but at the same time having something to look forward to, and to move at a different pace than I had been before. Now, I'm 40 years old in 1980. And 200-year plan seemed like the right thing to do. So
I'm going back to the question I asked you 10 minutes ago. What was the first thing you did in wine?
The first what?
First business, first investment in wine. How did you get started in wine?
I bought, I started doing the custom crushing.
Right.
And then
For what purpose?
Because I want to learn about wine. I wanted to learn about it.
So you crushed some grapes, you made wine, and what did you do with the wine?
Well, I made the wine that would become, it started out not even as Maryvale. It started out, well, I had my two partners, Peter Stocker and another fellow, John Montgomery, who I had known since first grade in school. Yeah. And I told them I wanted to get, first thing I told them I got this boat. Do they want to be in the boat or not? And they said, sure, we're in. Yeah. And then when I ended up buying a little piece of land in Napa Valley, I said, about this land in Napa Valley, you guys want to be in on that? Yeah, we're in. I said, well, next time I said, I'm starting a winery. Do you want to be in? They said, well, yeah, we want to be in. And so the first building we bought, was the old Sunny St. Helena winery, which I didn't know at the time, which is the first winery that Robert Mondavi's father started after Prohibition, and that had been over the years. It was owned by Christian Brothers, and so I bought that, and that's what became Maryville, and that became the place where I learned about wine, not only about making wine, but how to how to sell the wine. How to deal with this complicated distribution.
You're doing this part-time because you're still Pacific Union.
You have to have a day job to earn the money to be able to do this stuff.
Yeah. And so you did that for a few years.
Yes.
And then I think you sold it.
I sold it in 13 years, if you can believe that. But during that 13 years, I found the land which would become Harlan Estate. Harlan Estate was, we learned the three different ways we learn in general. We learn from authority and rationally, logically put together a plan and execute on it. Other way we learn is really empirically, trial and error. Try this, try that, and see what works. And over time, we get to start to learn, seeing patterns and things, and so we begin to learn intuitively. But that takes a long time. Go ahead.
So these things flashed in my mind as we're talking. I remember in one conversation around this time, you went into this whole dialogue on terrain. It must have been after you bought the land, but you hadn't done anything with it, how important the terrain and the climate and the slope, and you were really into the land. People in the past would mention it, but you got into, you were almost like counting the rocks, the pebbles, the this. I mean, you really were into it like you had a PhD in this property and why it was so perfect and unique for what you were trying to accomplish.
Well, a 200-year plan, the only way, if you want to produce something that's really among the finest in the world, you have to really focus. And I was a long way from being ever focusing.
Okay, so it's coming to me now. You had talked about you wanted to create a first growth in Napa Valley. This has got to be 30 years ago or more. I thought you were out of your mind. I didn't say the word I usually say because I'm being, but you had a vision. I remember you was very quiet. Very detail-oriented, very strategic in your thinking, but not a person of many words. And you had this vision for creating a first growth in Napa Valley. I'm going to say, do you remember it? But I'm sure you remember it because it was your thought.
If I was going to get out of the business I was in, which was a very, very good business, I wanted to create something way beyond that I would be able to do in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of creating this 200-year plan meant, and part of the 200-year plan was to create a first growth, in quotes, a first growth of California. We know there isn't such a thing, never would be, but the idea that would be maybe welcome to the table of the fine wines of the world, or why even start it? And the other facet I would say, I spent this year on the ground in Africa, all over from the heart of the Belgian Congo to everywhere you could think of. And what I would see everywhere in the world were two things. One, Coca-Cola, and miles from any power or anything, Singer sewing machines. So they could make clothing, and they had a treadle. You didn't need any power to have a little machine there. And I said, someday, I'd like to be able to have something where I had a presence around the world. Now, being in the real estate business in California, you're not going to be able to do that. But once I saw wine, I said, there's a chance. If I could create something like a first growth, and we could get it in the key markets in the world, an international perspective would really be important for my children and grandchildren if I could get on it, would find a wife and have kids. And who knows if the kids would, if I could have kids, or if they'd be interested in wine and all those kinds of things. But I said, I mean, the odds certainly weren't in my favor. My odds weren't in my favor for a whole lot of things. But some way, I was lucky. I ran, fate, just serendipity. Things kept, it would happen.
No, you were obsessed. Even many years ago, you were so focused. Everything you did, from the wood and the design of the winery to the cultivation and design of the vineyard. I mean, maybe there are others like you, I don't know, but you were singular. You were a force within. I don't know if that makes any sense. You were never doing it for other people. You were doing it for you.
Well, and for the generation, hopefully the generation.
No, but that's another factor. I'm just saying your obsession with quality and perfection was, to me, an outsider and a friend and an observer. I saw this in you. You don't see in very many people, or it takes different forms in people, but you were incredibly focused and obsessed to create what became Harlan Estate. That's why you're sitting here.
I was focused, and I would say from the time I bought that land, cleared the land, planted the vineyard, made our wine. I never showed that wine to anyone for 13 years. I want to make sure when we brought out the first wine, it was that the critics or whoever, you also felt that the wine had a chance of someday maybe being welcome at the table of fine wine. So that took me 13 years, and that's 13 years of not a nickel of revenue, let alone ever making a profit. That was another 7 or 8 years. So it's a time perspective. Remember I said that my perspective on time totally changed. But having a plan that was way into the future gave me that confidence, or that maybe that conviction, or that.
So what year did you release your first wine, and what vintage was it?
Well, the year we released the first wine was in 1996.
Right.
We never released the 96. We never released the 87, the 88, or the 89. The first wine released was in 1990.
In 1996.
We released it with the 91 in 1996.
And what kind of production was there in those early years?
In the early years that we didn't release, around I'd say between about 300 and 500 cases. But by 1990, it was about 800 cases. In 91, it was a little over 1,000 cases. And here we are today, say 40 years later after starting. Our average production with Harlan Estate over these years has been about 1,800 cases.
And no matter what you sell it for, it's going to be hard to make a profit given winery and overhead and organization and so forth. Is that what led you to bond? What caused you to go in a different direction from a estate bottled to explain what bond is so that people.
Okay, bond. What bond was? Remember, I mentioned that we learned 3 different ways.
Yeah.
Well, Harlan Estate was a plan I had in my mind. I want to create, in quotes, first growth in California.
A chateau.
Okay, that took 13 years before I was willing to release my first wine. I'd already, but we also started Maryvale. Now, Maryvale was a training place where I could make every mistake known to man, and no one really knew who it was, really. And so when I ended up ready to release Harlan, I sold Bond. I sold the Maryvale.
Right.
But when we sold Maryvale, Bob Levy, who was a winemaker during all that time, Bob Levy said, Bill, there's 2 properties. We'd bought fruit from over 60 different growers at that time. 60 growers, trial and error, seeing how good this land was versus that land, and learning about the Napa Valley. A lot of things changed at that time. It started out pre-phylloxera, then you're there during phylloxera, and now post-phylloxera. That was what went on in that, say, that 13, 15, or 15 years of making wine for Maryvale. And so he said we should keep these 2 vineyards when we sell Maryvale and start something around that. And so that's what Bond was. It was.
But you didn't own the vineyards. You just had contracts to buy the grapes.
Yeah, we had contracts with the grapes.
Yeah.
And so when we started Bond, we entered into a much different kind of contract, longer term contract, a contract where neither one of us owned the name 100%. So we 50-50 owned the name of the property, so that if we ever split, they could never use the name and neither could I. And so that was the beginning of Bond through trial and error. So over the next, say, 10 years, we bought fruit from maybe another 40 different growers, still learning. And so by the time we brought in our fifth wine at Bond, we had bought fruit from over 100 different growers, and these are the 5 properties out of that 100 growers.
So Bond is 5 individual wines from 5 individual vineyards. And what is the production of each of those approximately?
They average about 600 cases, 600 to 700 cases.
So that's not a lot of wine either.
No.
Did this satisfy your need to generate revenues to cover your costs, or are you still not at break even now?
Well, it wasn't that. I mean, it wasn't bad. Yeah, no, that was still not even close to break even at that time. What it was is my dream of first growth. Yeah. The smallest of the first growth was, say, Aubryon, which was about 1,200 cases. The other ones were really double that. Yeah. And so I wanted to be somewhere in the range of the smallest first growth and maybe the best known of the Burgundies of a Grand Cru. As time evolved, over that period of time, it grew from how I found my land. I followed the strategy of Burgundy more than Bordeaux, which was to be in the hills, above the floor of the valley, not at the very top of the hill or the bottom of the hill.
So do you, at this point, own 50% of the vineyards or just the bottling of the wine?
Just the wine.
So the grower owns the vineyard?
We bought the fruit. The grower owned the vineyards. Right. But it was almost like a partnership in the name of the what they think of as the vineyard.
So they would get cash for the crop and then a share of the profits from the making of the wine?
They didn't share the profits, but they did share in the profits, but it wasn't a 50-50 kind of thing. Yeah. So they got paid for the grapes plus a piece. So you got not really the profits, a piece of the.
All right. So you have Grand Cru, you have Chateau, then is it Promontory is next?
Promontory is next. What happened with Promontory?
How did that fit in?
Well, with Harlan, say we're at say we get to 2,000 cases. Right. That's a long way from 12,000 or 10,000.
But then you also had Maiden, right?
But Maiden is the second wine of Harlan. That's only about 900 or 1,000 cases. And so Bond ended up being about 3,000 cases. Right. And now I'm up to about 5,000 cases. I needed to get closer to 10,000 to be able to be big enough to have the freedom and to be able to hire the best people and to be able to keep the best people. And so if I was too small, it's hard to last for generations. You need the freedom, but you also need to be big enough to be of consequence. And if I wanted to be able to have enough wine to be in the key markets of the world, I couldn't do it. It's just a little teeny thing. So my dream was to get up to someday maybe 10 to 12,000 cases. And so Promontory, Bond started, say, 12 years after Harlan, even though we started working on it even before Harlan. And 12 years after Bond, when I found the land where Harlan is, I'd been hiking all through the hills where I thought the best vineyard lands in America could be. And where Promontory was one of those properties. It was almost right next door to Harlan. But it wasn't for sale. It was too big. It was like 800 acres. It's a whole canyon. It's not, Harlan's a hill. Yeah. Promontory's a canyon. They're almost opposite of each other. And so my attorney knew that I would someday like to be able to buy that land. And in 07, he said, Bill, this land may come for sale, and as the economy is getting worse and worse and worse. So he said, would you be interested in it? And I said, yes. And so he says, I'll introduce you to the people that have it. Anyway, I made a deal to buy that property, or into an agreement to buy it. I didn't close on it until 2008. part of the reason for that was to get to the size I wanted, but primarily, it was two things. We had a great young winemaker that I wanted to be able to keep, and I felt that if he didn't have a chance to be working on something that he helped create, the same thing with my son. I hoped he would come into business, but I didn't know if he would. Didn't after he got out of school. He wasn't talking about coming in the wine business, etc. So I felt if I acquired something that they could not only be maybe stewards of what I'd started, but they could start their own. If I could buy that land and it was as good as the quality of land that Harlan had, it would be best chance of the 200-year plan working, which is to be able to keep a great winemaker and get my kids interested.
The person or the party that you bought the land from, were they investors? Did they own it for a long time? Was it part of a family?
No, they had bought it. They had it for probably 8 or 9 years. And they were from Wyoming. They didn't really know what they had.
It was just an investment.
Well, that they thought they'd be in the wine business. They had another winery and some things, but they had no idea. And this is a big commitment. And they only owned half of that canyon. And so I only bought one half. That's all I could get.
Oh, I feel terrible. You only got half of the canyon.
Yeah, but I needed to control the whole thing to be able to start what you think of as a brand. Brand is not a legal word in our vocabulary, but to start what most people think of as a brand. And I thought it might be able to blend it with Harlan, and Harlan would be a lot larger. But once we acquired it, it's the same level of quality, but the character is very, very different. So it needed to stand on its own. So that's how Promontory came about.
And how big is that in production?
The land is about a little over 800 acres, but it's only 10% of vineyard. So Harlan Estate is about 10% of that land is in vineyard, and Promontory about 10%. The rest of it's woodlands, forest, wildlands. And so now we have something that could be about, say, 4,000 cases. So I'm now at about 9,000 cases. So that's where I need to be.
Okay. So there are two side pockets. One was, I think it was called the Reserve, your club.
Yes.
Why you as a private individual, a very private individual, when I heard that you were starting this club where people are going to buy an interest, they live somewhere in the United States, they're going to come and pick grapes and they get a case of wine, whatever it was, I thought you lost your mind. But obviously, what was this club all about, and how did it do? Is it still in existence? I have friends in New York who joined it, and they used to get a few cases of wine every year, and at some point they went out and picked grapes. I thought they were crazy too, but can you explain it to me?
Well, I was born before the war. Then there were very, very few people born in America during that time, before and actually during the war. I mean, you're one of us. We're all in the same cohort, or whatever they call it, the silent generation. We got to see what was going to happen before what happened to I think of the elephant and the snake, the baby boomers. So we could anticipate what was going to happen if they went through the same kind of things that we went through as we were growing up. And Robert Mondavi told me, Bill, that land where Meadowood is, it's not good vineyard land. If you want to do this something special, you should own the land outside here. Where it's a alluvial fan here. It's kind of like the Tokelon land or something coming out of the hills. And so that wasn't for sale, but I leased that. I leased it for 20 years. The family I leased it from, they were the second owners since California became a state. They didn't want to sell it. Their father told them, don't sell it until the family's owned it 100 years. So I leased that land for 20 years to hope to be able to buy it at the end of that 20 years. And during that period of time, I had also started a little wine school at Meadowood.
A what?
A wine school. So people could learn about wine like I was trying to learn about wine. And that was John Thurene that ran that. I don't know if you ever remember John Thurene. Anyway,
the name.
He ran that wine school for about 20 years. And I'd sit on the classes every so often, and a lot of people would say, I want to learn, I'd like to be able to get to see what it's like in a winery. What's it like during harvest? What's it like working out in the vineyard? They wanted to get out and actually do it, not just sit at a classroom learning sensory evaluation of wines and food and wine pairings, that kind of thing. So I started that school. During that period of time, I could see that more and more people interested in the Napa Valley. And so, having a real estate background, I said, I'll buy a piece of land and be able to sell homes and things out here. Well, that never worked. They changed the rules as fast as you could try to figure out how to do it. And the Napa Valley Ag Preserve made it almost impossible on the floor of the valley. Anyway, make a long story short, we'd also built golf courses before. And there are more people that drink wine and play golf. And you can drink wine when your back is bad or your elbow's bad or whatever goes on. And I felt there's no wine club. There's got to be room for one wine club. There were at that time, I think there were around 800 golf clubs in America, and no wine club. So that was the idea. It's kind of like a golf club, but it's a wine club, and it's for both members of the family, not just the male.
So this is around what year did you start it?
Started that, I was convinced that might be a good, in 1987, started making wine for it. In 87, 3 years before I actually bought the property. In anticipation, if I could get a club, it takes a while before you have a wine, and you aren't going to get someone to join. They have to wait another 4 or 5 years before they get anything. So I started making wine in hopes to be able to get the entitlements to do it, and then do it. So that was, say really from the idea to really doing it, bringing the first members, like 10 years. So it was a lot of patience for these things, and it takes a certain amount of financial wherewithal to make these things happen, and there's no one who believes in it. My partners didn't believe in it, the banks didn't believe in it, no one believed in the idea. So it's 100% your risk money, but sooner or later, my partner came in.
So was it successful?
It's been way beyond what we could have imagined. We have over 700 members from all over the world.
It's still active?
Still active, yeah.
And they still come there to pick grapes?
Yeah.
And they still get cases of wine?
Yeah. But it's totally separate from Harlan and Harlan and Promontory.
Do you recall what year you went to Augusta?
Maybe I went a few times. I would say it's 20 years ago when we played.
when we went together.
Yes.
Because I remember we had a whole conversation on the airplane about the reserve. I mean, I can't believe I'm even remembering these things, but because that was an out-of-body experience, if you remember, that whole trip.
Oh, yeah. That must have been 25 years, maybe more.
The fact that they let us on the golf course, neither one of us was a rock star on the golf course.
Well, I certainly wasn't.
I wasn't either.
Well, you were a little better than I was.
Yeah. So that covers the result. What about Meadowood? You bought it. I remember being a member, I guess, over 40 years ago. It was a small group of vintners that were members. I remember Duckhorn and this one and that one, and it was a little wine club. It wasn't really. And then all of a sudden, you start adding to it with buildings, and there were spas, then there were swimming pools. I always had Villa 43, because that's the one I stayed in when I would go to the wine auction all those years. They would never rent it out to anyone. It was mine. But you took something that was, I don't think very many people could have made that into a success from what it was, but you turned that into a focus point for the Valley. How did you accomplish that? I mean, I was there watching it, and I was always mystified how every year I'd go there and be something new, something different, something improved, something. I mean, whether it was the restaurant or even the general manager or the people that worked there and the things you added. It was you had a vision for it that was far beyond what you were entitled to have as a vision for what was then a sleepy neighborhood club.
Well, I think the wine auction helped. I wasn't sure what I could really do with it once I committed to the wine auction. But we were able to get the entitlements to build it, to build the buildings, to create a little resort there. And the idea was to create a center of the Napa Valley. There really wasn't or hasn't been a center. And if we could kind of do that and get more of the vintners and growers to join, as well as other people that were interested in coming to the Napa Valley. So that was the idea, and then we needed to elevate it to the same level of wine we hope to be able to produce. So that was a dream. I feel that, I would say, one of the things that's enabled us to be able to accomplish what we've accomplished is we've really had great people and great continuity. Bob Levy, who was our first winemaker. Don Weaver joined us in 86. He was the director of Harlan Estate since the beginning. Lisa works in the office. Lisa's been 42 years. Bob Levy, 41 years. Don Weaver, 38 years. My wife, met her the same year I met Don Weaver. We were married in 86.
Your winemaker.
Winemaker Bob Levy. He's 14 years younger than me. Don Weaver is 11 years young. They're all younger than me, and we're all still together. And so that's after 40 some years.
Is there anything wine related that you've done that I don't know about, that if I knew about, I would ask you about? Are you hiding something from me?
I may not be, but the next generation, you never know.
Let's talk about the next generation. You now have your son and your daughter in the business. You earlier said that you had hoped that they would be in the business. What occurred to the point where they came to you, or you went to them, or however it occurred, that they said, "Dad, we want to be all in"?
Oh, it didn't work. It didn't happen that way. What happened was when I acquired Promontory, Will, our son, could see. Our daughter's basically 3 years younger than Will. Our son could, because I've had the same attorney now, Richard Mendelson. I've been working with Richard now for, say, 38 years, 36, 38 years. Wonderful guy, really smart, and I feel very fortunate. He's the one that brought me Promontory. Matter of fact, his son works with us, and so his son is really a key person in the whole international distribution network. So I wanted Will at the closing to just see what it's like in closing something and see what the negotiations are like and this and that. So he was there at the closing, but he was still a senior in college. He was 20 years old. He turned 21 about 60 days later. And I could see that he was a little interested, way more than he had been before, but not enough to even think about doing something about it. But it was like 3 years later, when he came to me and said, "Dad, my friends would like to buy wine from us, but we don't have anything for them. But I've been sharing some of the wine that we have around the table, and I'd like to start a little label on my own from our younger vines." And I've talked with Corey Empting, the winemaker, to see if he thought we could do something like that. And he says, "Well, you got to talk to your dad." So I told him, if you really want to start it, you've got to build your own way of selling it. You have to build your own network. You can't use any of our distributors, any of our mailing lists. And if you can start on your own. And the idea is first do no harm to anything that the first generation started. And if you want to do that, give it a try.
That was Mascot.
That was Mascot, exactly.
Right.
And so the Mascot came from a combination of Deborah's parents had given her, or her grandparents had given their granddaughter, my wife, a story on this little dog. It happened to be an English Bull Terrier. Growing up in the slums and that kind of thing, and becoming a show dog. And I loved engraving. like the engraving on this label, you talked about details. This is done by an American banknote company, the last company that really engraved our currency up until the Bureau of Printing and Engraving. And so I had a great engraving of this dog. So he liked the engraving of the dog, and that would be because the winemaker had a dog, the vineyard manager had a dog, we had a dog. So it was a dog, a breed that no one else had, and so that was what he wanted. So we called the mascot and an image of this dog. So that's the label. Didn't look like any of our other labels, and so he's grown that. It's worked really, really well, and that's what
Cabernet?
brought him in. Pardon?
That's Cabernet?
I'm sorry?
Cabernet, is that the grape?
Cabernet, it's all just so young vines of Harlan, Bond, and Promontory.
So it's a less expensive wine.
Yes.
It sells for what?
I think $185 a bottle.
That's not cheap.
No, but it's the same vineyards as Harlan and Bond and Promontory. It costs the same amount of money to produce as it does.
What's the production? How much do they sell of it?
They're at about 7,000 cases. And that's now been, first vintage was
So
08.
he owns that.
No, the family owns it.
Family.
Basically, we started transferring everything into the kids' names way before they were interested in wine. Started on that, say, almost 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And so everything is now pretty much moved into generation skipping trust. So it's really their children. So really our grandchildren. Now that we have, this is the first year that we got the grandchildren now, but we started on that 20-some years ago.
Yeah.
So
you don't like white wine?
Say again?
You don't like white wine?
No, I like white wine.
Every one of your wines is red wine, Cabernet.
Yeah, but I figured that we started out doing some Chardonnay at Maryville. We did a dozen different varietals. You got to remember before phylloxera, there were so many different varietals in the Napa Valley.
So have you ever thought of doing a white wine?
We do a white wine at Napa Valley Reserve. I felt that if we wanted to be among the best in the world, we had to really, really focus. I mean, like I said, that first 40 years was nothing but adventure and lack of focus, but trying to find if there is, in my lifetime, there's anything I will get focused on. I love to work, and I love to dream about ideas, and I like to break away what's been done before.
Let's switch gears for a minute and talk about the current wine market. People today, many wine regions are struggling. Bordeaux recently lowered prices 30%. Countries that export to America, sales are down. California wines are down. Some are up, but many are down. What do you think is going on in the wine market as it's being challenged today after many years of robust growth?
Well, even in the news this morning, I saw that even the luxury, even LVMH is down. So even the big luxury businesses are down too.
But that's more spirits than wine. I was talking mainly about wine in general and Napa wine in particular.
Well, there are a whole lot of things going on. At the lower end of the business, you have the seltzers and you have all the other kind of drinks that are be popular right now. I think in the long run, in the top end of the business, there are always going to be people that with a certain level of discernment, they're going to be there to buy the wines. Now, as far as the wine prices everywhere right now, I think that it gets right down to the wines, the people who own the wines, the wineries.
Today, Harlan Estate, when you release it, sells for what? The
two are
to the consumer.
Basically, if you look at the price of the wine in the aftermarket, the price of the value of your wine is what the price in the aftermarket is, basically.
Right.
okay, the thing that is you can look at every day, pull it up, say Wine Search or whatever, it's around, I don't know, between $1,600-$1,700 a bottle.
Is that a barrier to growth? Is that does that create problems for you being so expensive?
Well, we haven't grown in years. We only have so many acres of vineyard, so we can't grow.
Yeah.
And so we're not growing. And so we can only produce so much. So just like, it's the old laws of supply and demand.
Yeah.
And
Right, but not talking about Harlan in particular, but there's been so much said and written. Once Napa Cabernet got over $300 a bottle, then $500 a bottle, now $600 or $800. There are a lot of small, quote unquote, cult wines that are selling between $500 and $1,000. They don't represent a large part of the market, but is that creating a barrier to people who want to drink the great wines of the world?
I don't think so. You've got some of them there, and I don't want to talk about any names, but they just raise their prices to be able to have the most expensive wine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much credibility that has, but there'll always be those. I think that buying fruit, a lot of the growers that have the very, very best land, they're in a very good position. They can charge basically what they want. So
when you talk to your peers about the wine market today in Napa, what sort of their feeling about it? Are they challenged? Are they fine? Are they doing well? Is it, what's sort of like the insider attitude towards the wine market today?
I wouldn't say I'm an insider. I'm not really in the middle of.
No, but you talk to other winemakers and winery owners.
I think it has to do with why they're in the business. If they're in a business to have a wine brand, they don't make too much wine. They're having fun with it. They get to do whatever they want. Are they making a lot of money? I would say there's, when we first started, when I first came to did this documentary, there were like 5 or 6 wineries in Napa Valley. Now there's over 700, and I think there's over 1,800 labels. So there's a whole lot of people doing it. So I think the people are in it to make money, and if they're not at the top end, it's pretty tough. At the top end, they can't grow. And if they don't keep their demand ahead of their supply, they're not going to be able to keep the prices.
Is cannabis a factor at all in terms of wine sales today?
I don't really know. I mean, we read. I'm
only saying because you're California and they grow it there and they they drink it, they smell it, they hold it, they shoot it. Who the hell knows what they do with it? Yeah.
I think that does have an effect on it, but it's not as much as I thought it would. And I don't really, in the long run, I think that people kind of gravitate back to I'm the eternal optimist.
Well, it is grabbing consumer dollars, and some say that's why the wines in the $8 to $15 price range are those people that instead of necessarily buying 3 bottles out, they're buying whatever they're buying from the cannabis world. I don't really... Well,
I think it has to do with the buyer of the wine. We look at our audience, and we have three. Our target audience is really 3 groups of people: the curious, are really about fine wines; the interested, and the discerning. Now, each of those have their own dominant motives why they would buy wine. Just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, people have a hierarchy of interests. Why they would buy wine, and why they would buy wines that are more than $18 a bottle, or more than $100 a bottle, or more than $500 a bottle. I think that those kinds of things don't change too much.
Reflecting on your life, what are you most proud of?
I mean, you asked me that question years ago one time, I remember. My answer was different than what you thought it might be. What I'm most proud of is that I I mean that we, the team, and my wife also. First of all, that we were fortunate to have kids that have good values and a great work ethic, and have joined us in the business. So that's what I feel the best about, because it's a chance of, first of all, for them to have a much greater global perspective than they would have if I hadn't done this, if I stayed in real estate. And they're doing a fantastic job. I would say that's by far the most important thing. I think it's building a culture. I mean, we talk about the wines. I think that when I sold Maryville, I had about 10 people that were out working for us in quote, selling wine. The one I selected was Don Weaver. He wasn't out selling wine, he was building relationships. And when he built those relationships, he knew who our direct to consumers were. He knew what their dog's name was. He knew the kids' birthdays. He knew every one of our customers. And in those days, we had like 5 to 1 of people want our wine. But I made a deal with Don that 1/3 of our wine would be not sold direct to consumer, be sold to the trade, and I want to have an international presence. He built the relationships with our importers, with our distributors, with our accounts. And so I would say having a team that was really more interested in the long term in building relationships instead of just selling bottles of wine.
Do you have a national distributor, or do you sell mainly direct to consumer? How do you?
No, we sell, depends. Harlan and Bond and Promontory are all a little bit different. Harlan right now is still around 70%, 2/3 to 70% direct to consumer, and say 1/3 is through the trade, and of that probably 60% is international and 40%.
What's your biggest market outside the United States?
Canada and Japan.
So, following up on the last question, what is your vision for the future of the family wine company after you're gone?
Well, first of all, they are interested in it, and they're really working on it. Our son just got back yesterday from 2.5 weeks in Asia. They love what they're doing, and I feel that they'll be in the business. Without their kids, we never know. But if we build a culture strong enough, and we can learn how to continue to build desire ahead of our production. It's a wonderful business. Now, every kid, every grandchild or cousin or whatever, some of them are going to go off on their own, and I would some way make sure that that stayed in the family. And if they want to do something on their piece and go to something else that they want to do, but that would still have a piece of the place that the family had come back to, kind of the gathering place for the family where they can plug back into the values and plug back into something we feel is being. We see wine growing as an art of man and nature. And if we can move, and we're producing better wines everywhere in the world. Wines are getting better and better and better. We have 5 senses: sound, vision, smell, taste, and touch. Wine addresses 2 of those that aren't even addressed hardly, and that is a sense of smell and a sense of taste. Now there's maybe it's another dimension than a sense, which has to do with the cognitive side of the arts. The intellectual curiosity or interest. And I feel that wine certainly has the same level, maybe in a different way, of this intellectual curiosity as you get from the other arts. And the closer we can come to producing a wine that will be, I would say, more in focus of this idea of of wine being an art of man and nature. If we become more and more at one with nature, and we can produce a wine that could be closer and closer to being more deeply accepted as in the realm of art, that's the vision I would like to see well into the future. And when I talk with the younger generation, including Corey Empting, the winemaker, and Will, our son, he was really a philosophy major, and our daughter, they are really behind this. So it's a big challenge. When I look at how they're, I had an idea of what I want to create. I want to create something out of the raw land. I want to create say an American idea of what a first growth would be. What they've learned with Promontory, where they say I came in and changed the land to create something like I'd seen when I went on this trip. They're looking at when they go to Promontory, our people who are working with us at Harlan Estate go over there, and it's a wild land. They called it purgatory. They just didn't want to go over there. But over time, they've seen that the land is changing them instead of them changing the land. And this is a whole different perspective on how I thought about it, and I think a lot of the old world thinks about it. And so if they really continue to work on that, it's really working on the latent intrinsics, the things we can't see, kind of like we started earlier when we really focused on this land. That land is so important. But if we can more purely express the character of the land, going beyond quality, nothing about style or fashion or those kinds of things, but really the essence of the character of that land, and working on something that can be closer and closer in the realm of art, is really how I see it. And as far as my personal time, it's now, I've gotten to spend half my life totally just an adventure and
motorcycles and sailboats.
To laser focus on trying to create something very special, something bigger than any of us, and something that'll hopefully last beyond our lifetime. That's been part of what's been enabled us to hire great people and retain them. They feel from their vantage point, no matter what they're doing in the organization, they're making a contribution. From their skills or their gifts, they get to contribute in a very special way. And this is, to me, that's the dream for not only us and our family, but our extended family at work with.
So I always end with final question, and you have to answer in 30 words or less. You're long gone. I'm gone too, so don't feel sorry. We're both gone. But it's 50 years from now. And they publish the next edition of the Encyclopedia of Wine. And you come to alphabetical, you come to the name Bill Harlan. What do you want to see written there? 30 words or less. Think about it.
I won't be able to count the 30 words.
No,
I'll
but you
start
know
with that.
Something concise.
I would
that
say
summarizes who you are, what makes you, what's your soul, what makes you tick, what you want to be remembered for.
a little bit what I said. I would say if we could...
Not we, this is you. Somebody is writing about you.
Okay, if I could address and focus
I want to be remembered as the person that...
Okay, I'm going to be remembered as a person that thought about wine, brought more into the focus this idea of wine being an art of man and nature, that delights and enriches and inspires, like other art forms, and leaves maybe a deeper, even deeper trace in our memory.
Done. Lift your glass to Bill Harlan. Love you.
Love you too, Marvin. Thank you very much thank you for including me, and thank you for all the things you've done for all of us in the wine business. If it weren't for you and the people that have watched what you've been doing, for me, it would have been impossible to be able to get as far as we have so far. And it's an inspiration to see sitting in your office a little bit earlier. The things you've done all these years, it's just unbelievable.
Well, and just in closing, to follow you for these 40 some odd years and your tenacious, singular methodology of life, I've been an observer, and I'm very proud and cherish our time together today. It's sort of a summation of watching you all these years and all that you've accomplished. God bless you.
Well, we're fortunate for these last 45 years, both of us. And I'll admit that there's something I think is really, really important, and it's what I think of as amor fati, the love of fate, the things we can't control.
Yeah.
I know there's been things in your life that you couldn't control that have worked really well.
Yeah.
You didn't have any idea how those things would happen. They happened, and here we are, both of us still alive in our 80s.
Yeah.
We're pretty fortunate.
No publication covers the world of wine as completely as Wine Spectator, featuring exclusive interviews with winemaking's living legends and the world's finest chefs. Each issue of Wine Spectator magazine takes readers to the world's greatest vineyards and most interesting dining destinations. Most important, Wine Spectator rates and reviews thousands of wines each year. With an incredible database of over 400,000 wine reviews, Wine Spectator's editors guide you to the highest quality wines as well as the world's best values. There's a reason Wine Spectator is the world's most widely read wine magazine. Take your wine enjoyment to greater heights and subscribe today at winespectator.com.